The man who knows how to touch a woman correctly, without being inappropriate, without being needy, will always win. Always. And I'm not talking about anything physical in the way you might be thinking. I'm talking about something far more powerful than that. Something most men have never been taught. And honestly, most men will never figure it out on their own. But you're here. So let's talk about what actually works. This video is about 7 touches that will make a mature woman fall deeply in love with you. Not a girl who's still figuring herself out. Not someone who gets swept away by flashy compliments or Instagram aesthetics. I'm talking about a woman who has lived, who has loved and lost, who has rebuilt herself and knows exactly what she wants. She is not easy to impress. And she should not be. Here's what most men get completely wrong. They think attraction for a mature woman works the same way it worked on women in their 20s. It doesn't. She's not looking for butterflies. She's looking for something deeper, something that makes her feel seen. And that feeling, that sense of being truly seen, almost always starts with touch. Not the touch you're thinking of. The kind I'm about to tell you about is subtler. It's almost invisible to the untrained eye. But to her, it lands like thunder. And here's the thing I need you to stay for, because I'm going to reveal one touch later in this list that sounds so simple you'll almost dismiss it. But it is, without question, the one that makes mature women emotionally attach the fastest. Most men never use it, not because they can't, but because nobody ever told them it mattered. So stay with me. Every single point on this list builds on the last. Touch number 1, the anchor touch. A mature woman has spent years around men who grabbed her attention loudly with big gestures, big words, big promises. So when a man places a calm, steady hand on the small of her back while guiding her through a doorway, or rests his hand gently on her forearm when he's making a point in conversation, it disrupts everything she's been conditioned to expect. This is called the anchor touch. It's brief. It's grounded. It communicates one thing without a single word. I'm here. I'm steady. You're safe. Psychologists who study nonverbal communication have found that brief, appropriate physical contact during conversation significantly increases feelings of trust and warmth. For a mature woman, who has probably been disappointed by men who were loud but unreliable, steadiness is intoxicating. It is one of the most underrated forms of attraction that exists. The anchor touch doesn't demand anything. It doesn't linger too long. It doesn't make her feel like prey. It makes her feel like she's next to someone solid. And solid is exactly what she's been looking for. Touch number 2, the remembrance touch. This one requires something from you that most men are too distracted to offer: attention. A remembrance touch is when you make physical contact in direct response to something she told you before. She mentioned her shoulder's been sore from stress at work. 2 days later, when you're sitting beside her, you rest your hand gently on that shoulder and say, "How's this feeling today?" She mentioned she gets cold easily. You notice she's rubbing her arms, and you quietly hand her your jacket, with your hand briefly resting on her shoulder as you drape it over her. It seems small. It is not small. To her, it means you were listening when others weren't. It means she exists in your mind between moments. That is intimacy before intimacy. That is what makes a mature woman fall. Because here's what she's learned from experience. Men who remember the details are rare. Men who act on what they remember are even rarer. Touch number 3, the non-transactional touch. I need to be very direct about this one because it's where so many men accidentally destroy attraction. Most men touch a woman as a transaction. They're warming up to something. They're escalating toward a goal. And a mature woman, a woman with experience, feels this immediately. She's read that script 100 times. The moment she senses you have an agenda behind your touch, the warmth she felt turns cold. The non-transactional touch is when you make contact for her comfort, not yours. You notice she seems tense during a conversation and you briefly squeeze her hand and then let go. No lingering, no expectation. You're sitting beside her watching something and you reach over, give her knee a quick light pat, the way a close friend would, and return to what you were doing. It communicates that your touch is a gift, not a setup. And a mature woman who receives that, she starts to chase it. She starts to wonder why you're not pushing further. She starts to lean in. Psychologically, we always want more of what isn't being used to manipulate us. Touch number 4, the public claim touch. Not possessive, not aggressive, confident. There is a world of difference between a man who grabs a woman to mark territory and a man who places his hand on her back in a social setting simply because he's proud to be next to her. When you're at a dinner, at a gathering, in a public space, and you rest your hand on her shoulder or lean in to say something with your hand lightly at her waist, you're making a statement, not to other men, to her. You're telling her without a single word that you want people to know she's with you, that you're not embarrassed, that you're not keeping her a secret. For a mature woman, this matters more than you know, because many of them have been the secret. Many of them have been with men who were physically present but emotionally absent in public. A man who claims her, gently, warmly, confidently, gives her something she may not even realize she's been starving for. Touch number 5, the protective reflex touch. This one isn't something you plan, and that's exactly why it works. When something startles her and your hand instinctively goes to her arm. When she's stepping off a curb and you reach out to steady her without thinking. When she's carrying something heavy and you take it before she even asks. These are reflex touches, and they reveal something about your character that no carefully crafted sentence ever could. They reveal that protecting her is instinctive for you, not performative, not deliberate, just natural. And a mature woman who has spent years developing excellent instincts about people knows the difference between a man who's acting protective and a man who simply is protective. Here's the psychological layer most people miss. These kinds of touches trigger what researchers call the secure base effect. They communicate to her nervous system, not her mind, her actual nervous system, that she can relax around you, that you will notice when something is wrong. And relaxation, true emotional relaxation in the presence of a man, is something many women haven't felt in years. When she feels it with you, she will come back to it again and again. Touch number 6, the slow touch. I told you there was one on this list that sounds too simple. This is it. Not slow in a dramatic way, slow in a present way. When you hand her something, your phone to show her a photo, a glass, anything, and your fingers linger for just one breath longer than necessary. When you brush her hair back and you do it slowly, without rush. When you take her hand and instead of gripping it, you simply hold it like it's something worth holding. Speed communicates anxiety. Slowness communicates confidence. And confidence, real, quiet, unhurried confidence, is the single most attractive quality a man can carry into a room. A mature woman has been touched by nervous men her whole life. Men who rush because they're afraid the moment will disappear. When you move slowly, you're telling her you're not afraid. You're telling her you're not going anywhere. You're telling her this moment is enough for you, exactly as it is. That is deeply attractive. Disturbingly attractive, actually, because it's so rare. And here's where it gets interesting. Studies on nonverbal communication consistently show that slower, more deliberate physical gestures are associated with perceived dominance, trustworthiness, and emotional stability. You're not just making her feel good. You're triggering deep biological wiring that has nothing to do with logic and everything to do with how her body reads safety and strength. Touch number 7, the aftertouch. This one happens after the moment, and most men don't even know it exists. The aftertouch is the way you hold space physically once the touch has ended. You squeezed her hand, and now you're still sitting close enough that your arm is barely grazing hers. You pulled her in for a hug, and when it ended, you didn't step all the way back. You stayed close, present, unhurried. This is where emotional attachment actually forms. Not in the peak moment of contact, but in the quiet that follows it. Because what you do after touching someone tells her whether the touch was about her or about you. If you immediately check your phone, shift your body away, or move on to the next topic, she reads it as withdrawal, even if it was unconscious, even if you didn't mean it. She reads it as that was for him, not for me. But if you stay present, if your body language remains open and warm, she reads it as he's still here. He still wants to be here. And that feeling of being wanted, not desperately, not loudly, but quietly and consistently, is exactly what makes a mature woman think about you when you're not in the room. That's what you're actually after, isn't it? Not just to impress her in the moment, but to be the thought she can't shake at midnight. Here's the mindset shift I want to leave you with. Most men think attraction is about doing impressive things, saying the right things, looking a certain way, having the right job or the right car or the right opening line. And for some women, some of the time, that works. But a mature woman has already been impressed. She's already been charmed, she's already been given flowers and taken to nice restaurants and told she was beautiful by men who disappeared 6 months later. She is completely uninterested in impressive. What she is desperately, quietly, hungrily interested in is real. And realness doesn't announce itself with grand gestures. It shows up in the way you steady her without thinking, in the way you remember which shoulder was sore, in the way you hold something like it matters instead of rushing through the moment. Touch, when it's honest, is one of the most transparent things a human being can offer. She will read everything in it. She will know if you're present or distracted, confident or anxious, generous or selfish, all from the way your hand rests on her arm for 2 seconds. So the question isn't whether you know what to say to her. The question is, when you're next to her, what does your touch say about who you are? Because she's already listening to it. She just hasn't told you yet. Now, if you think these 7 touches are powerful, you need to watch this next one before you're ever near a woman again. Because there is one specific thing men do when they go in for a hug, something that feels natural, even polite, that makes a woman immediately, instinctively pull away, not just physically, emotionally. And most men have no idea they're doing it. The next video is called, When You Go to Hug a Woman, Never Do This. It's already waiting for you. Click it now, because once you see it, you'll never hug the same way again.